Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gulgee Museum, the Amin Gulgee Gallery. I'm really thrilled to announce the launch of Gulgee Museum, the Handbook. This is a project that has taken over 2 years. Editing has been done by John McCary, and the layout has been done by Kiran Ahmed. Gulgee and Zaro were a phenomenon. I mean, I remember coming home every day to a circus in my home. You never knew who was in and out of the house. There were intellectuals, there were chats over liquor, there was cigarette smoke. It was always a party. And they were wonderful parents to me and my sister Zarmeen. They made us travel the world. We went to Paris, we went to London, we went to New York, we traveled everywhere. I remember once when we were tiny kids, and there was a hovercraft. We took a hovercraft from London to Paris, and there was rough seas, and everybody vomited on the craft. And then we got off, and we were tiny. Our parents just sort of loaded us up with cognac and said, "Beta, this will put you at rest." And it did. I mean, they were a force of life. They were life itself. I mean, before they passed, they were dancing till 4 o'clock at the SOS Bowl. They never talked about the past. They never reminisced and said, "Beta, ek zamane mein." They never did that with me. It was always about the now and what will happen. I remember they had plans to go to Dubai because they met some sheikh or something or the other, and I could never really keep up with it. I could not keep up with their energy at age 72 and 82. Now, what I have collected in front of me or beside me is a wonderful, learned group of people who knew my parents when they were alive. I had all asked them for written bios of them, but I'm not going to use them. I've decided to chuck it. I'm going to introduce them how I see fit. So the first on the roster is Javed Jabbar, or affectionately, yay! A big hand for affectionately known as JJ. I remember him as a child and I thought, oh my God, this guy is Bond. He's so handsome, so tall, so dynamic. I was besotted. Javed sir, and of course we know he is an incredible ad man. He did revolutionary works in the 70s and throughout, a senator, etc., 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 Hilal Imtiaz. And now I'm going to hand it over to Javed Saab. And can you maybe tell us an anecdote about Zaro and Gulgee?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much, Amin. What a apt introduction, not to me, but to the whole gathering here. And so good to see such fine faces, mashallah, and to the right of me as well. What a way to remember them. I am privileged to have known them. Had you already come down on the planet in the early 70s?
Yes,
No, you had.
I mean,
yeah.
That's what I think I saw you.
You were that bothersome character somewhere, always distracting your mother, and you're now continuing to distract us, but so creatively. So how does one sum up the experience of knowing these two thoroughly unique individuals? Zaro, Gulgee. Well, first of all, irresistible. I mean, you couldn't just but help being affected by their respective personalities. Irresistible. Lovable in their own way, lovable. Even though your mother was a difficult person compared to Gulgee, but because she and I were co-founders of SOS Children's Villages, so I got to work with her separately. And, incredible. Well, Gulgee, dear Gulgee, how do I go about? Briefly, so robust, so full of energy is what comes to mind immediately. I mean, apart from the skill, the talent, the ability to use the earth as his palette, to chisel stone, to shape it, to cut it, to paint with stone, apart from being able to paint with oil and to visualize dashes and clashes of color. And one day, I used to, on a voluntary basis, look after the Central Institute of Arts and Crafts. She survived my chairmanship, Nilofer, but we managed to preserve it. And Gulgee told me, Javed, why don't you film something I'm going to paint with a colleague who's visiting from France. There was this artist visiting from France. So we had live art, a huge canvas put up, and these two artists, Gulgee, the much more eminent of them, and they started and they did this in 1 hour. He created a whole world right in front of your eyes, you know, never stopping, just driven by his vision. And that was one memorable afternoon. And as usual, I went and lost the film that I made of that sensational experience. But I'm very good at losing things, because I even lost the print of my own film, Beyond the Last Mountain. And the only surviving print is in the Lincoln Arts Center in New York. But it's not about me. Burma Shell commissioned me to make a series of 4 portraits. Ahmed Parvez and Jamil Naqsh and Laila Shahzada and Gulgee. And I hope they've held on to this portrait of Gulgee that I got to make in the late 70s, a short film, 10 minutes. But whatever one did was not enough to capture the mystery. And also, to his credit, his brother, Sadr Ismaili, my God, he shared some of those attributes of creativity. He was a very gifted photographer, still photographer. And the black and white work that Sadr did, inspired, I'm sure, by his fraternity with Gulgee, but the two of them made a remarkable pair of siblings. And Zarro, my God, the home you describe, Shabnam and I were privileged to attend their parties. And you mentioned a certain liquid. I never saw anything. I mean, it used to be pink or red or yellow, but I mean, they were harmless. It's like tea. I thought we were having tea. And that's where I got high tea. That was truly high tea.
High tea.
And may their souls rest in peace. They have contributed, both of them, to the imperishable legacy of our country's aesthetics. May their souls be up there painting away, painting heaven in new colors. New colors.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. It's funny you mentioned my Uncle Sadr. His son is right in front of me, Agha Abbas, who's also a very respected photographer. And it's also funny you mentioned performance. Yes, my father painted with a Belgian artist a performative work. It's so funny because I do performance, and there he was doing a performance. Was it the 70s, right?
Yes.
The 70s. This huge painting in front of an audience. Now I go to beautiful Gogo, or Nigat Mir, but we know her as Gogo. Or I've always known her as Gogo. This dynamic woman, the wife of Imran Mir, an incredible modernist, somebody I've always, his trajectory I've had a very soft spot for. It's clear, it's direct, and it helps me think. And, you know, and they were wonderful to me. I remember after my parents' death, there was a talk at FOMA, and it was right after the death, a few days after. I was still really vulnerable. And like, it all went well. I was like, okay, you're gonna do this, Amin, you're gonna do this. And I was doing it till the very end. And when I looked up, I saw all of these faces of concern and love looking at me. And that's when I cracked out. And then Nigat and Imran just embraced me and helped me outside. And I love you guys. And I would like to again ask you, tell us a dirty little secret of Zarro and Goldie's.
So I will approach it from the point of being an artist's wife. I want to relate an anecdote which I experienced Imran had come back, and in 1981 he was having an exhibition at Ali Imam's Indus Gallery. And we were newly married, and I was really excited. And he said, "Come, Nigat, come and help me." And I was like so over enthusiastic. Ye yahan rakho, ye karo, and yo karo. Ali Imam was standing and watching me. He was watching me very carefully. And then he couldn't take it anymore. After some time, he called me. He said, "Come here, Nigat." So I said, "Ji, Imam Sahab." He said, "Now you don't become like Zaro." And I was like completely shocked out because I didn't know at that time who Zaro was. And it was only later I was to discover that they all didn't like her because she had a very direct and straightforward manner. You know, Gulgee was a damn good artist. He painted, and there were a lot of takers for his work. But they would take the painting and disappear with it, no payment, nothing. And the galleries would also not be as cooperative. So I think Zaro took matters into her own hands, and she was very protective of him. And if Ali Imam thought I was going to become like Zaro, I now understand that I would take it as a compliment, because she was an amazing woman, you know. And if being your husband's foil and his protector, and you know, being there for him in everything is something that is commendable, well, why not? So she wasn't behind the great artist, she was right there along with him. You know, a lot of people will speak about Gulgee the artist, but I think Zaro had a huge role to play in all that. And I may have you know, taken up some of the attributes unconsciously, but I'm happy about it. So I salute that woman. And secondly, you know, I want to thank John and Amin, because they have done a huge service to art in Pakistan by getting the Gulgee Museum going in one place. It's like a gem in a dung heap, the dung heap of Karachi. And we owe them a lot. And may many more other books be printed about Gulgee. And Amin in his own right, because he's an amazing artist, great son of his father. And wish them all the best for this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gogo. I mean, you're such a dynamic human being, both of you. But you are, and you're really continuing Imran Saab's legacy forward with your prize with the Imran Mir Foundation and the brilliance that he had. Thank you so much, Gogo. Now we turn to Mr. Anwar Rummel, who belongs to the same religious sect as I do. And I think knew my mother and father before they were even married, am I right? Yes, so he goes way back to old Bombay, maybe. and Anwar Rummel in his own right is this tremendous, again, ad man, brilliant, you know, ran big agencies, but more importantly, could you talk about Zaro and Gulgee, please?
Zaro was known as Zarina Maladwala. And one of the Maladwala was a friend of mine in Karachi. She was actually belongs to Bombay. When I was going to London in 1961, this Maladwala told me one of the relative, Zareen, is in London. Would you like to meet him? I said, yes, of course. So he introduced me. I met Zaro in 61 in Jamaat Khana. I was staying in the hostel, Aga hostel. There we had a Jamaat Khana, so we used to meet there. She was a great lady. Very social, doing a lot of work in the Jamaat, and then she was a great dancer. We used to have a dance parties, which I saw even in boat club, Gulgee and Zaro dancing like anything. So she was a great lady. So while discussing, she was going to USA to do her PhD in chemistry. So 60, one end I came back. One day I got a call from her. I want to meet you, but where are you? He said, I'm in Karachi. I said, what are you doing in Karachi? He said, you don't know? I said, I don't know. I got married to your friend, artist Gulgee, in Paris. She was a great saleswoman, great businesswoman. I mean, it's because of her that Gulgee's paintings were being sold. I don't think Gulgee can sell any painting.
Absolutely, I agree.
She was a great lady. The Gulgee I met first time when he used to live in Garden East, near Vito Road, opposite Qaid-e-Azam Mazar. And I used to live near Vito Road, near Jamaat Khana. So one day I went to Jamaat Khana to attend the lecture of his father. He was a missionary in Ismaili community. Being a student of the religious night school, so I went to attend. There I met him. He came also with his father. His father used to talk on Islam, Ismailism, Sufism. Great person. He himself was an engineer, but great person. A great family, you see, from Peshawar. So then while I was introduced, I said, I'm also doing some art. She said, why don't you come and see me? So I went to his house, you see. He had some old studio. And his brother was also a photographer. Mm-hmm. What was his name? Sadr. Yeah.
Sadr Ismaili.
Yeah, right. Sadr Ismaili. He was a great photographer also. When I went to his house, I took my painting, which I got first prize in Park American Center, where I used to learn painting. So I did in watercolor, street scene. So when I showed him, he says, good, good, good. But he started painting in oil. So this is how then I started painting in oil. But I tell you, great teacher. Humble, honest, simple, very cooperative, excellent nature he had. I learned a lot from him. Every time I go to him, he would do something new, you see, and tell me something, how to do it. You see. Great person. Then I was busy with my new business. Hardly any time to meet friends. I had I was socializing, but with my clients. So while socializing, I used to meet Gulgee and Zaro in boat club, dancing, right till 2 o'clock in the morning. Great. I tell you, I've never seen something like this couple, you see. Always active. Always, humble, meeting people. The last I met him was in his studio. He had this white brush with all the colors on the brush, painting in his studio on the first floor. I could see he was feeling tired and his hands were feeling tired. But he would not leave it till the last. How many artists like this at the last? I really miss him. There are two things that I missed in his book. One is Gulgee was given a space in one of the functions in the community where the Aga Khan was presiding it. While he's presiding, he's working, and Gulgee was given, you see, all the facilities to sketch. Where are those sketches? I don't see, number one. Number two, I have a photograph I want to show you, which is not in the book. It is a lapis work, this one. I tell you, it's the best piece of work. You don't see it in the book. So I asked him, he said, because of his original work, which is kept with the late Aga Khan, so therefore. So these two things I've missed.
Thank you so much, Uncle. The mosaic portrait you're referring to was my father's first mosaic portrait in lapis lazuli. And it was of Aga Khan III. And as a young kid, I remember Aga Khan IV visiting a house in KDA. And he really liked this portrait and wanted to acquire it. And he insisted with my father that no Gulgee, I must pay for it. And that was a requirement for him to acquire it. You mentioned a lot of sketches. My father sketched the whole family. His grandfather, him, 4, 3, his brothers, and they're all with the Aga Khan. Aga Khan 4, and now, of course, Aga Khan 5. And in fact, the Aga Khans have the largest collection of Gulgees outside the Gulgee Museum. Now I will move to beautiful Tabinda. I remember who's an artist. She has 2 books published on her. She's shown all over the world. But I remember her when me and John, we'd just come to Karachi. I had my very first gallery show with Ali Imam. And there this gorgeous woman appears. And both me and John were gobstruck. She was beautiful, she was charming, she was dynamic. Oh my God. And then she bought one of my pieces, which I was thrilled about, my mother's portrait. Tabinda, would you have anything to say about Gulgee and Zara Mirijan?
I have a lot to say about him, but I don't think I shall take an hour or 2.
No, give us the spicy bits.
Yes, the spicy bit, yes. Okay, now, actually my parents knew the Gulgees, Zaro and Gulgee extremely well. They used to live in KDA at that time, and we lived there as well. So we'd go over quite often, or they'd come over, and there used to be evenings together. And at times, in fact, Gulgee would ring up and say that, come over. He'd tell my father was Muhammad Hadi Hussain. So he said, Hadi, come over. So I'd tag along too, to see some of the, he'd put these paintings on an easel, and then he'd show them one by one, and one more beautiful than the other. So that was my introduction to Gulgee and Zaro. And then after that, I got to know them very well as well. So they became good friends of mine also, And after that, I just made a few little notes in case I forget. Yeah, one day, Gulgee, I'd gone over and to see some paintings, and he said, well, I'll be painting on a canvas in 1 or 2 days, so do you want to watch me paint? I said, absolutely, I'd love to watch you paint. So, so he called up, and he said, well, I'm going to be painting tomorrow afternoon, and so if you're free, come over. I said, absolutely, I will. So I went over, and then we went to his studio, and he had this huge painting, huge canvas, about 12 or 10 by 8 or 12 by, 10 by 6 maybe, or 12 by 8 or whatever, large canvas. And then there was a long table, if you remember, had a long table with different colored tubes. There was all the different colors and huge brushes with each color. So he said, all right, now you sit there, Tabinda. So there was a chair, and I sat there, and that was it. There was just this one chair and the canvas and the tables. And he looked at the canvas, he went back, kept looking at it, and looked at the colors, and then he picked up a Firozi, a turquoise. And so I said, well, let's see what he's going to do with it. And then he stepped back. And he sort of jumped, not really jumped, but he went up and down. And then he had this brush in his hand. It was quite exciting, quite funny in a way, but at the same time it was wonderful to see what he's going to produce. So, and then he went running towards the canvas, and he did something like this, you know. And you see, the brush was like this. So what happens was, it was thick, then when you go like this, it becomes thinner, and then again it became thick, and that was the end of that one beautiful color. It already looked like a beautiful painting to me. Then he looked and he picked up a black one, the black color, you know, with a clean brush. So he did the same, but he went the other way, you know, that's it. So then he looked at me, and I was sort of really enthralled. I said, oh my God, this is fabulous, you know. He says, do you want to try? I said, me? He said, yes. I said, absolutely, I'd love to try. So I got up, and I did exactly what Gulgee did, tried anyway. Got up and I looked at the colors, and I picked a red. I picked this red and the brush, and I went back, jumped up a bit, and ran towards the canvas and did exactly the same, you know. And turned out okay, you know. Anyway, then Gulgee took other colors, 2-3 colors, and then the canvas was done. And it was absolutely gorgeous. So he said, which one is yours? Which was your stroke? So I said, oh my God, that's the biggest compliment, because if you can't find my stroke, that means I really, really done a good job with how you use your strokes. So I told him it's the red one, because I remember the color I'd used. So that was quite funny, and both of us laughed and laughed and laughed, because it was quite funny that he didn't even know which was my stroke. Actually, at home, I have a painting, one of his realistic works, of a camel man, with 3 camels. And they're very realistic, very beautiful. One of his drawings, a large one. And I've seen some beautiful ones in his book. So it was similar to those. And this was done, I think, in 1981, if I'm not mistaken. And so, you know, from there, then he went on to semi-abstract work, calligraphy, working with lapis lazuli, etc. I mean, he was very, very versatile as an artist. And then there's another one which I didn't realize, and I've got that at home, and he'd written my father's name, Al-Hadi, you know. I said, oh my God, because he asked me to come and have a look, and my father passed away by then. And this must have been in 2000. So my father passed away, and I saw that painting. I said, oh my God. He said, yes, in remembrance of your father. I said, oh, wow, may I buy it? He said, yes. So he said, I'll give it to you cheaper. I said, oh, fantastic, thank you so much. So I bought that painting, I've got it at home, and it's Al-Hadi. Shabnam has seen it. And yeah, it's one of my favorite paintings. And Zaro, now let's come to Zaro. Zaro was his backbone. She really was. I mean, you know, she used to be there for him always. She was, he was one of those malangs, you know. And, but Zaro was the one who would make him do things, or she would help him in doing things. And she really was a very strong, very wonderful woman. And I think you're right, Nigat, that if she wasn't there for him, he would have been very famous anyway because of his paintings. But I think he became even more famous because of her, because she was really totally. I want to say something, and that is that if Amin, I'm glad he sculpts, because he's really reached the top as a sculptor. In fact, worldwide, I would say, not just Pakistani, because even my daughter has a beautiful sculpture piece of his in New York, and fabulous. And then I've got 1 or 2 small ones. I've got one of your mother's, by the way.
Yes, you got my mother's hair.
Yes. He wanted to buy it back. I said, no way. You know? Yeah. So he'd made Zaro, and he'd studied it with beautiful stones. And it's a beautiful piece, and it's a lovely bust of her. And I don't know if you made many other bits.
that was the only one.
That's the only one. So I was lucky that he allowed me to buy it, and I have it. And I'm not allowing him to buy it back. So that was the thing. And with Amin being a sculptor, his father being an artist and a great sculptor, I'm glad they didn't do the same thing, because there would have been too much competition. And Amin, hurrah to you as a sculptor, and hurrah to Gulgee as an artist, and hurrah to Zaro being his wife and helping him along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tabinda. And you're right, my parents were a partnership. I think they were more interested in each other than anybody else. They were truly, truly fixated on each other. You know, it was, and they would fight, and they would love, and they would fight. I mean, they were dramatic, but loving. And the love that they had for us, we were always very sure that they loved both me and my sister. The love was just always there, and they were always approachable. And yes, my mother was a strong woman, and I'm so proud that my mother was a strong woman. You know, I really am. I'm a Pakistani man, and that's what I believe in. Strong women are the only women that should be. You know, now we go, speaking of strong women, I've got Uzra Dawood. She's known as Zara, but the first time I met her, she was Uzra, and she will remain so. Uzra is Ivy League educated, Harvard Law School, blah, blah, blah. Is a philanthropist, runs her own hedge fund in Karachi, absolutely dynamic and beautiful. I remember meeting her first time, way back in the day. You'd just come back or something, your father brought you over. My father was there, you wanted to pick up a sculpture, and I thought, wow, I love the energy in your eyes. I hope I see you again. And I did, and I'm really grateful for that. Uzra has written for the Gulgee Museum Handbook, and she interviewed my maternal uncle, Iqbal Maladwala, and my paternal uncle, Noor Ali Ismaili, who unfortunately passed away recently, and Wahab Jaffer. None of the three can be here, but perhaps you would like to talk about that experience. Ms. Dawood.
Thank you so much, Amin, and congratulations on today's launch. I'm deeply honored to be here, and I thought I'd begin by putting in context. My parents and Amin's parents were dear, dear friends who used to party in the day, as many have spoken about. So we're very blessed to have purchased some of the early works of Gulgee and to have them. So growing up in Canada, I actually called Gulgee Uncle my mirrors and stone uncle, because the pieces had his mirrors and stone work long before I met him. And I had a separate relationship with Gulgee Uncle, Zara Auntie, and Amin, as you know, and that'll all come in context then with the handbook. So first, Gulgee Uncle, I actually asked him to make some mirror and stone paintings for me once, and I first started meeting him in the old KDA house that was spoken about, and then in this house, I'd asked him to make some paintings for me personally, because my father was a great collector, but I wanted to have some paintings made. So he told me, like, what would you like and which colors? And so I had a Bismillah made, as well as a Yasin, both of which were stone and mirror work, and I used to sit with him while he painted. But there was absolutely none of the drama that we hear about that Tabinda Auntie talked about, and that was in the famous competition he had. So there wasn't action, it was sitting and conversation. And that was a special relationship we had. With Zara Auntie, she was always fixing me up with boys. It was a totally different vibe, and it was a very different energy, and of course my relationship with Amin is very different. But when Amin asked me to interview his relatives, as well as Wahab Uncle, what happened is he just assumed I would just fly all over the world and meet them all. So it just was taken for granted. So first came his maternal uncle, and his mother's younger brother. And we met in Toronto at their beautiful apartment, his Mamu and Mamania. And it was an incredible experience hearing about his mother through the eyes of her childhood and what it was like in Bombay and how extraordinary she was. Now, of course, Amin always talks about the amazing love story between his parents and eloping to Paris and the Aga Khan marrying them. That is something that he's very, very proud of and very much comes from. But his maternal uncle was talking about Zaro pre-marriage, which is absolutely fascinating. And I know we heard from Umvar Uncle a little bit about Bombay days and his own friendship with Zaro Auntie, but she was in the military. I mean, she was in the military, and she ran the household, and when there was issues or problems, she took over, and she'd meet her friends, and she was adventurous, and she refused to marry early, and she got a degree to study in the US on full scholarship, and all the sorts of things that Zara Auntie decided her own life at all times. Then when it came time, so Amin was like, okay, now that you've done this, hop off to London and interview my chacha. And so I was like, Amin, okay, it's hard to say no to you, but he gave me such a tight deadline, we decided to do it on Zoom. And we decided to do that wisely because then his chacha shortly thereafter passed. And so when I interviewed his chacha, he was quite unwell by that stage, but boy, was he revealing. And it was interesting to hear the stories of young Gulgee, and how their grandfather had given him was a draftsman and gave him the H2 pencil to start the first sketches. And that Gulgee uncle was an engineer, and an award-winning engineer. You know, he went to Harvard and so forth himself, and then went to the Aga Khan for the blessing for his work and was told to work 5 years before you do art. So he went and then designed and built a dam in KPK, which is quite extraordinary. And we don't think of these elements when we think of Gulgee uncle, but he was actually a gifted engineer. He was a smart man, period, before even separate from his brilliance as an artist. If he had been pressurized to go down a different life path, he would have been one of Pakistan, or if not Pakistan's greatest engineer. So his greatness or fame, as spoken about, would have come through whichever channel he had channeled it, but his love was from art, and we're very lucky that he was permitted to live that dream. And then came the love story of Zaro and Gulgee, as spoken about earlier, and I, being the hopeless romantic that I am, asked how they met and how they were match-made, and it happened in Dhaka. So it was really interesting that a wonderful friend of the Aga Khan introduced them. Shams Laka, exactly. And what happened was Zara Auntie, Gulgee uncle fell in love at first sight. It's been confirmed by all accounts. But Zara Auntie was very much like, you have to earn my love. And it was quite extraordinary. And that they had to be married only by the Aga Khan and in Paris. And so be it. And he rose to the occasion, and they never looked back. And then hearing about not just their love story, but how they built a home from that love. Amin spoke a few minutes ago about how much love was in their home for their children and each other, but also for everyone else. Their home was an open door full of welcomeness and love for all around. Then Amin asked me to interview Wahab uncle, Wahab Jaffer, who's not only a brilliant artist as well as an art historian, but also someone who is a dear friend of the Gulgees, and again, part of the party scene. But perhaps a little later, when my parents were in Canada, he was throughout having those boat club dinners and parties with them. And he shed a different light because to him, Gulgee uncle was his mentor, not just a friend, but a mentor. And he talked about how unusual the way Gulgee uncle approached his art. And we all know that he began with the portraits and the more traditional, and then he went into spirituality and the calligraphy. And that journey, that evolution, is what Wahab uncle speaks about in my interview of him. and also how emotionally close they were. It wasn't just an open door to welcome people to the home, but the relationships were not just wide but deep. Wahab uncle, like all of us here and certainly on the panel, deeply miss the Gulgees. It's not that they miss them as artists, they miss them as human beings. And I feel that although the handbook has so much depth and so much breadth to it, I was really lucky that my contribution was bringing down the human beings that they were from childhood. And it was a deep privilege for me, an honor and a privilege, to be able to not only take those interviews, but to spend time with the people who knew and loved them pre and then during the evolution, but even pre they even met each other, before they met each other. And I remember, and I'm gonna just end on this note because I think it's a little cheeky, that when I came and talked to Amin after the interviews, Amin and John, I said, you know, Amin has always been a third gentleman and is very, very much, you know, obviously very well brought up, as one would say, but I had no idea, as I told him, what khandan he came from both sides. How his mamu and chacha treated me, how they looked after me, how they spoke about their families. Like, these are beautiful families that we are proud of as people, not just as artists and artist/businesswoman partner, however you want to call it, but even as people, such good people. And so that was a side that gave me even more context to not just Gulgee, but, to Amin, but to Gulgee uncle and Zara auntie, but also the museum itself. And when you go and explore the museum, and certainly when you read the handbook, I hope that you do feel that love that we all felt putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Usra. And Usra, you're a tremendous writer. The great thing about Usra, this is one of her talents that perhaps people don't know that much about, is her ability to write succinctly, clearly, and elegantly, Usra. And she has this tremendous sensitivity, so when she really talks to someone, she allows them to feel comfortable, and they reveal themselves to you, Usra, and I'm really grateful for these Q&As. Well, my parents, oh my God, Gulgee and Zaro, how I miss them this evening. They were tremendous to me, so accepting of every aspect of me, and had incredible trust in me, which I don't quite understand, because I wasn't really run-of-the-mill sort of son. And I remember when I came back with John, they were so accepting of our lifestyle and so supportive. And that is one major reason why we could make this our home base, Karachi, Pakistan. And I remember when this museum was built in the year 2000, all of it. I mean, I've resurrected it for the purposes of it solely being a museum, but it was built in the year 2000. I remember going over to my father's section, and I said, and I saw these 3 paintings. I said, Dada, what are these? They're like, Beta, these are my nuktas. I'm like, wow, this man can reinvent himself in his 80, 70, gosh, I mean, look at this guy, unbelievable. And I said, I want all 3 of them. In fact, after that, my father would hide his nuktas from me, because whenever I went and I saw a nukta, I would just walk back home with it, which was just across the yard. It was funny. 2 years ago, they told me, my mother come to me and said, your father and I would like a museum where we are. And I said, okay, Ma, and this is what we want. And I said, okay, Ma, because that's the only thing you could say to your mother, yes. 2 years ago, and after their passing away, I was unable to do anything for a while. And then 2 years ago, I thought, hey, Amin, you have to do something. They're not coming back, and you have to move on. So I began the process with Samina and Jarbala to re-envision it as a museum space. And then there had to be a publication. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is not the last word on Gulgee. It's just a museum handbook. And there has to be so much more academic research and scholarship that needs to be done on this great man, Gulgee, and his brilliant partner, Zaro. I mean, they were a force of nature. And thank you so much, you all, for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.